NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney once again reiterated, saying Ottawa will resume trade talks with President Donald Trump when appropriate, after Trump suspended negotiations last month over an anti-tariff ad from Ontario's government. Carney, speaking at the G20 in Johannesburg, said he remains open to discussions with the United States. The United States, Ukraine, and key European partners are gathering in Geneva today for critical talks on U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has arrived in Geneva and is joined by U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz reaffirmed support for Ukraine and backed a comprehensive peace plan for Gaza during G20 sideline talks in South Africa. The two leaders also stressed the need for humanitarian aid to Gaza and pledged deeper cooperation on critical minerals, clean energy, and defense. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said he will speak with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as Western security advisors meet in Geneva to review the U.S. 28-point peace plan, which leaders consider a basis for further work. Carney has emphasized support for Ukraine's sovereignty, noting that feedback will be sent to Washington. U.S. Federal Appeals Court has rejected the Trump administration's bid to expand fast-track deportations nationwide, with judges ruling the policy posed serious risks of erroneous summary removal for immigrants. The decision upholds District Judge Gia Cobb's ruling that the policy violated due process rights for some immigrants. President Donald Trump has accused Democratic lawmakers of sedition and said that they should be in jail after they released a video urging U.S. troops to refuse illegal orders, a message they defended as protecting the Constitution. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has said the lawmakers' actions could be punishable by law. Brazilian former President Jair Bolsonaro has been arrested after the Brazilian Supreme Court ruled that he tried to tamper with his ankle monitor. Bolsonaro had previously been sentenced to more than 27 years in prison for his role in a failed coup attempt. At least 10 people died and around 20 were injured on Saturday when a tourist bus overturned in Michoacán, Mexico. The bus has left Uruapan for Chalpujahua. Authorities have not yet determined the cause, and investigations are still ongoing. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is meeting Ukrainian officials in Geneva today as Washington pushes to finalize President Donald Trump's controversial plan to end the nearly four-year war. The talks come as Kyiv demands changes to the 28-point proposal, which would require Ukraine to cede some territory, limits its military, and abandon any bid to join NATO. President Volodymyr Zelensky says diplomacy has been reinvigorated, but insists the bloodshed must stop without sacrificing Ukraine's sovereignty. European leaders meeting on the sidelines of the G20 warned the U.S. plan has major flaws, including risks to Europe's security and concerns that Ukraine was not properly consulted. Zelensky has also said that there is an understanding that America's proposal will include a number of elements based on Ukrainian perspectives and critical for their national interests. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Raymond Vickery. He's an international affairs expert and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Raymond, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what do we know so far about what's included in these talks and the peace plan made by U.S.?
Well, thanks very much for having me. What we know is that there is a requirement for the ceding of territory beyond that which is held by Russia now in the Donbass. We also know that there is a pledge against ever joining NATO, but going much further than that, there are limitations on the arms, the defense mechanism that Ukraine could have. Those are very, very crucial points. There are some points in there about rebuilding from the destruction which has been wrought by Russia on Ukraine, but there doesn't seem to be any enforcement mechanism. As we've discussed in the past, to have peace, you have to have a strategy to wage peace, just like you do for war. You have to have partners, and you have to have principles in regard to what is the outcome. Those elements really are not here. President Trump has said, well, if President Zelensky doesn't accept this, he can just fight his little heart out, basically indicating an abandonment of Ukraine. In 1994, there was in Budapest an agreement signed by Russia, by the United States, by the United Kingdom, that if Ukraine would give up its nuclear weapons, which were left over from the Soviet Union, then there would be security guarantees of the sovereignty of Ukraine as an independent nation. Unfortunately, what this agreement does, that's being discussed in Switzerland, is basically jettison that in favor of some sort of protectorate arrangement between Russia and Ukraine, much like that which existed at the time of the Soviet Union and the Russian Empire, and still exist into Byelorusia. And this seems to be what Putin wants, to restore the old Russian Empire, the old Soviet Union. So it's a very distressing approach. There is one U.S. senator from South Dakota who says that he was briefed along with other senators by Marco Rubio, and saying that this is basically the Russian plan. And of course, there was a secret meeting of a Russian official who was already sanctioned by the United States. They had a meeting in Florida, and basically that's where this plan came from. So Donald Trump, President Trump, wants the Nobel Peace Prize. We all want peace in Ukraine. The killing is terrible. The invasion is a contravention of the United Nations, but this does not seem to be a way in which to get long-term peace. It seems more like appeasement of Russia.
Right, as you rightfully mentioned, and thank you for highlighting that, there's no enforcement here. Without any enforcement, how effective could this, whatever comes out of these talks, could be? And also, what do you think Trump's motivation is here suddenly? Do you think it is because he lost a lot of MAGA support during U.S. government shutdown? Or do you think he's realistically trying to get Russia and Ukraine sit and talk peace here?
Well, I think you have to say on behalf of President Trump that he really does abhor the killings which are going on. That having been said, it's plain that there's no real foreign policy of the United States now. What there is an attempt at aggrandizement by President Trump to be able to say that he's a great man, that he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, and that he can really chalk this up as a victory and go on trying to appease his MAGA base, which really wasn't in favor of supporting Ukraine in the first place. So I don't think that this is out of character at all with the president's approach to foreign policy. It's just another real estate deal to him, and once it's done, then he he can claim victory and move on to other things. You know, Ronald Reagan, President Ronald Reagan at one point said you can achieve a lot, you can accomplish a lot if you don't care who gets the credit. Well, the President Trump approach is exactly the opposite. Unless he gets the credit, he doesn't think that anything has been achieved. So this is a very difficult time. One hopes that the great democracies of the world, India, in Western Europe, Japan, will have an influence here to say that, you know, you just can't have appeasement. You've got to be able to come out of any of these terrible conflict situations with a long-term approach which will have peace and not peace at any price, but peace with justice and adherence to democratic values.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Raymond for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we stay in the region. Brazilian President Lula da Silva has expressed serious concerns over the United States military buildup near Venezuela. He has warned that the presence of U.S. naval forces and stealth aircraft in the Caribbean could heighten risks of conflict. Additionally, Lula has stressed the importance of dialogue and plans to discuss the issue with U.S. President Donald Trump. This comes as the United States recently sent an aircraft carrier strike group and other naval assets to the Venezuelan region. Earlier in September, U.S. forces conducted strikes on more than 20 vessels in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific, which resulted in over 80 deaths. However, Washington claims that these vessels were involved in drug trafficking, but no evidence has been presented yet. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Raymond Vickery. He's an international affairs expert, joins us, and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Raymond, for staying with us. Now, how do you think this Lula's concern would be seen by Trump, and how might this U.S. military buildup near Venezuela and Brazil affect their regional stability?
Well, thanks again for allowing me to comment on this. It seems to me that the orientation of President Trump is a throwback really to the 19th century view of imperial greatness, that he has a view that great powers, whether they be Russia, the United States, are entitled to control the area around them. And I believe that President Trump thinks that he has the authority to control what happens in the Western Hemisphere, and that his methods of being able to do it are really up to him. In regard to the destruction of these boats, he has arrogated to himself the role of prosecutor, of judge, jury, and executioner all at once. This is not in accordance with the rule of law internationally or in accordance with the rule of law in the United States. And you may have observed that when 6 members of Congress spoke out and said, you know, illegal orders do not have to be followed, which is a bedrock really of U.S. Rule of law, he said, well, they can be considered traitors, could be sedition, and they could be subject to execution. This is completely contrary to the way in which the United States has been committed to the rule of law since World War II. This old approach of being able to have empires, one empire in the West, maybe another empire with Russia, another with China, leads to catastrophic war. So one hopes again, that somehow this genie can be put back in the bottle. The only way, really, it seems to me that we can be able to move forward in the United States constitutionally is by a redress at the ballot box in next year with the midterms. And I have no doubt this approach of shoot first and ask questions later, and my way or the highway will not be appreciated by the American people, since they see that instead of building peace and prosperity, which is what they voted for in 2024, they're getting instead an aggrandizement and empire building approach, which went out with the 19th century. So it's a very difficult situation, but we've been through difficult situations in the past in the United States, and with the help of other great democracies, as I have said, we hope to be able to ameliorate, to rein in, to get this president back on the track of rule of law and building peace and prosperity with strategy and partners, rather than these unilateral actions.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for giving that great example, Raymond. Always nice hearing from you. Thank you very much for joining us today at NewsX World. Now we have breaking news. According to Lebanon's health ministry, an Israeli airstrike on Beirut's southern suburbs has resulted in 1 death and 21 injuries. The strike targeted what Israel described as Hezbollah's chief of staff. The Lebanese ministry has called the attack a preliminary toll, emphasizing that the strike had significant civilian impact. According to reports, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave the orders for a strike in Beirut, which allegedly targeted Hezbollah's chief of staff today. Now we go back to U.S. A federal appeal court has ruled that the Trump administration cannot expand its fast-track deportation process to include immigrants apprehended far from the border. A 2-1 panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia of Circuit has upheld a lower court ruling that the administration's policies violated immigrants' due process rights. The lower court had sided with an immigrant rights group blocking the U.S. Department of Homeland Security from enforcing policies that expedited the removal of immigrants believed to have been in the country for less than 2 years. The country's majority judges, Patricia Millett and Jean-Michel Childs, has said that the administration failed to show that its procedures adequately protected immigrants' constitutional rights. The judges cited concerns about the risk of erroneous summary removal. The ruling keeps much of the lower court's decision intact, but it does allow certain aspects of the policy to continue. Judge Naomi Rao has dissented, calling the ruling impermissible judicial interference, while the Trump administration's appeal is set to be heard in December. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what political and legal implications could arise if this Trump administration's fast-track deportation policies are eventually allowed to expand?
Good to be with you again, Asima. As you have just stated, they want to expand this. The fast tracking was specifically applied to anyone that they got coming over the border on the Mexico-Texan border, and this was under the Trump administration first, number one, and then the Biden administration then cancelled that. The DC-9 in Columbia, in Washington D.C., has said that the Trump administration cannot expand this to other parts of America. And your previous guest has just been understandably making comments on what has been happening in Venezuela, and President Trump then taking out narco boats, or that's what they're saying. The key is to some is they're turning around and going, you have got to adhere to the law, to the letter of the law and the Constitution of the United States. Now, in regard to other things under the Biden, you and I would need to sit here again for a number of hours to go through that, and how the weaponization of the law and how that's been abused. But one of the biggest platforms in regard to the Trump administration on being elected was to deal with illegal immigration. Now, how that's going on, sometimes that looks unsightly when ICE agents are going into various cities in America. If we take Chicago for argument's sake, the history of that, the history of violence, sadly, in that city, and needing to get things dealt with, it's understandable that other people would want to be able to support the law enforcement in that area, especially to get murder rates down. They are very strong on going around the country to get rid of illegal immigration, illegal migrants out of the country. But also, as people would turn around and say, including your previous guest, which is doing it within the Constitution and the letter of the law. And this is what is being tested right now. On a personal level, I understand, in my humble opinion, support that in America, they do not want illegal immigrants coming into the country. There is a legal way to do that, where people would then become American citizens and swear allegiance to the Constitution of the United States, and borders are there for a reason. Problem is, previously 4 years, and we can go back many years, even Obama at one point was actually saying, you know, we need to reinforce our border, we need to stop the illegal immigration coming in. And also under the Clinton era, we go back to Reagan, where he was then gave an amnesty, and people were still coming in. So the border issue is huge in regard to many issues that are on there in regard to smuggling drugs over there, and other people that want to do very evil things to America have come over that border in droves, particularly over the last 4 years. So this is a fight within the legal system for the administration to say, well, we wish to do this. We are coming across illegal immigrants doing things in this country that we disapprove of, and we want to be able to fast track them out. And Asuma, in my humble opinion, that is what this is all about. Over to you.
And Mark, as you rightfully mentioned, you know, this has been ongoing for a long period, including other presidents who had to face this issue. What do you think is the biggest issue for them to kind of control their borders? Is it just the fact that it's so huge?
It can be controlled. I know people down there doing that and paying a very clear attention to what is going on there. If they wish to address it, they can. And of course, under the Biden administration and other Democratic administrations, you can then say that it benefits them because people come over and they end up getting into the system, and then they end up being Democrat voters. The whole there needs to be an overhaul of the voting system in America, and keenly keeping an eye on how that's conducted in various states. That's highly important, and people are seeking to do that. I think the border, as you say, of course, is extensive. But a steel wall construction was started under the first administration. It was then stopped. The steel was just sitting there for years, getting rusty, if not sold off for very cheaply. It can be done. There are systems there to do this, and to do it extremely quickly and extremely efficiently. It's the will, and the will is there to do that in the present Trump administration. And I'd urge the Governor Abbott of Texas, for argument's sake, to have that urgency even more, to facilitate that and get it done. As I say, in any project like this, if there's a will, it will get done. It has to be, the will has to be there, and the will is there. it's also combining that by fighting issues within the legal system there.
Yes,
Assuming.
indeed. Yes, I also live by when there's a will, there's a way. Thank you very much, Mark, for sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Now we move on to our next news. 4 prison guards were sentenced on Friday for their roles in the death of Robert Brooks, a black man who was brutally beaten at Marcy Correctional Facility in upstate New York, U.S. The attack, captured on body cam footage, occurred on December 9th while Brooke was handcuffed. Nicholas Alzalone and Anthony Farina, who initially faced murder charges, received 22-year sentence after pleading guilty to manslaughter. 2 other guards, Michael Marshall and David Walters, have received sentences. Brooks' family has expressed their grief during the hearing, with his son calling the video of his father's death a horror movie. The case has sparked widespread outrage and calls for prison reform. Now we stay in the region. Rumors about the marriage of U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha Vance has circulated this week after pictures emerged of the Second Lady attending a public event without her wedding ring. On Wednesday, Usha Vance joined First Lady Melania Trump for a visit to Camp Lejeune, a major military base in North Carolina. Images from the outing showed Usha without her ring, sparking widespread speculations about the state of the couple's relationship. The Vances has not publicly addressed the rumors. A spokesperson for Usha Vance has responded to the marriage rumors, explaining that as a mother of 3 young children, she often forgets to wear her ring while handling daily tasks like dishes and baths. The explanation has sparked a fresh round of reactions online. The focus on Usha Vance's missing wedding ring comes just after another viral moment involving her husband, Vice President J.D. Vance. Last month, J.D. was seen sharing a hug with Erica Kirk, widow of right-wing figure Charlie Kirk, which sparked widespread discussion. The embrace followed a tearful speech by Erica, who spoke of the similarities she saw between J.D. and her late husband. Let's listen in.
I see no one will ever replace my husband. No. But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD and Vice President J.D. Vance. I do. And that's why I'm so blessed to be able to introduce him tonight. He's an amazing man. So please help me welcome to the stage Vice President J.D. Vance.
Why J.D. Vance also made headlines with remarks about faith in his marriage earlier. When asked about raising children in a mixed-faith household, Vance revealed the couple's decision to raise their children as Christian and expressed a hope that his wife Usha might one day convert to Christianity. Despite his beliefs, Vance emphasized that he respects her free will if she chooses not to.